Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Monday, December 7th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. More than 33 million Californians are now under a new stay-at-home order for the next 3 weeks, including here in San Diego County. Coronavirus cases have surged across the state, with new infections locally recently topping 2,000 in a single day. The hope is that new restrictions and business closures will slow down the spread. But as KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento tells us, not everyone agrees on the details.
The new order brings a lot of changes. Salons that were once allowed to operate under the state's most restrictive reopening stage are now closed. Outdoor dining is banned, and hotels can only serve essential workers. Retail stores are limited to 20% capacity, and standalone grocery stores to 35%. But Supervisor Nathan Fletcher says there are still some details the county is working out with the state.
Well, we're working to get some clarification around limited services, that's things like plumbing, things like that, to get some clarification on that. And a number of us are advocating that playgrounds should be allowed to be open.
Beaches and parks can remain open, but playgrounds cannot. State Assemblyman and City of San Diego Mayor-elect Todd Gloria called on the governor to open them. Outgoing San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer was also critical of the move. County Supervisor Jim Desmond says he's taking it a step further.
And I'd like to see, and I plan on making a motion, that our county officials and law enforcement not enforce the closures of playgrounds in San Diego County. You know, our children need to be outside. They can't all go to a ski resort, which the governor has allowed to stay open.
Desmond has opposed restrictions on businesses in the past and urged for reopening to be tied to hospital capacity. He says some action is warranted now based on the low ICU availability, but he says businesses that have invested in upgrades and have proven they can operate safely should be able to continue doing so.
You know, if necessary, then I'd support, some sort of rollbacks, but let people still have their businesses. People still have to survive and pay rent and put food on the table.
Fletcher, who co-chairs the county's COVID-19 subcommittee, says the latest measures are designed to prevent the worst case scenario.
If you overwhelm your healthcare system, you're put into a number of devastatingly bad choices around crisis care, who gets a bed, someone that's in a car accident not having a place to go. I believe that if we can all take action consistent with what we did when we went in the purple tier a few weeks ago, consistent with the new regional stay-at-home orders, I believe we can slow this spread to try and mitigate and potentially get through this.
He says the latest and largest spike in hospitalizations presents new challenges beyond the availability of physical beds.
The other thing that I think is really important is a problem that we did not necessarily have in March and April, and that is a problem with staffing. I speak to multiple hospital systems daily who are very concerned about the availability of ICU nurses. You have burnout, you have fatigue, you have a lot of traveling nurses that are in other parts of the country, and then you have a lot of healthcare workers who are getting infected.
Fletcher says the county is updating how it counts available ICU beds by tracking only those that can be staffed. That's how the state is tracking regional ICU availability. But KPBS reported the county has previously not included available clinicians in the equation. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
A county spokesperson could not immediately confirm whether the county will change how it tracks local ICU availability to match the state. And while many businesses are forced to close, the state is encouraging people to continue safe outdoor activities. Gyms are allowed to operate outdoors as long as they meet safety guidelines. Golf courses and pools can stay open, but reservations will be required. The beach and parks are open, but as we mentioned, playgrounds are closed. Overnight stays at campgrounds are also banned, and outdoor museums, zoos, aquariums, and family entertainment centers must close. Today, Governor Gavin Newsom said statewide there are just 14% of ICU beds available. And as KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman tells us, he is encouraging millions of Californians to leverage new technology to help stop the spread of COVID-19.
We know that these various restrictions are a hardship for people. It's not what we expected at this time of year.
But state officials say regional lockdowns are necessary. In the Southern California region, there's only about 10% of staffed ICU beds available. Governor Newsom says he knows even tighter restrictions aimed to slow the virus's spread are not easy.
I deeply recognize people's pain and suffering at this moment, their dreams being shattered because of this pandemic.
Newsom says $25,000 in grants are available for businesses right now, but he says the state can only do so much and is calling on the federal government to do more.
They are not doing their job to provide additional supports at the scale that's required at this moment.
This week, the FDA could approve the first coronavirus vaccine. We know in San Diego County, Rady Children's Hospital will be a storage site, and officials say 2 million doses could be in California by the end of the year. In the meantime, officials are encouraging all Californians to use a new tool to track exposure to the virus.
Privacy protected. This is not contact tracing. This is notification technology.
CA Notify is built into iPhones and is an application on the Google Play Store that uses Bluetooth technology to let people know when they might have been exposed to the virus. Since September, UC San Diego has been trying the platform with more than 25,000 users signed up.
We got great feedback from students, some who tested positive and said this took a weight off their shoulders, that they knew that they could launch this anonymous exposure notification and keep the people they'd been around safe.
Here's how it works. You activate exposure notifications on your phone. Then if you have a close contact with another user for more than 15 minutes who tests positive, you'll get a pop-up alert.
Your notification would say something to the effect of, 3 days ago, you were potentially exposed to somebody who's tested positive for COVID. Here are recommended quarantine guidelines.
This is not a replacement for physical distancing or wearing face coverings, and for it to work, users have to input positive test results into the platform. Officials say no personal or location information is collected, and you have to opt in, meaning it will not automatically turn on Thursday.
The more people who adopt it, the more effective it'll be.
Don't be surprised if you get a notification on your phone later this week asking you to opt in to the CA Notify program. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
President-elect Joe Biden is poised to nominate California Attorney General Javier Becerra as Health and Human Services Secretary. Governor Newsom says the incoming administration and Becerra will be great partners for health care reforms.
I am very enthusiastic about the pick. Couldn't be more pleased, not just for the Attorney General, but for this state and for our health care future as a state.
As the president-elect fills out the members of his health care team, a deadline is quickly approaching for Congress to pass bills to help with COVID-19 relief and to keep the country running. Here's Nadia Romero.
From California to Alabama, rising COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations. But U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams says we'll get a COVID-19 vaccine soon.
They are over 90% effective, and it's a way that we can ultimately end this pandemic.
President-elect Joe Biden releasing the names of his health team tapped with leading his coronavirus response.
They're excellent choices.
Dr. Anthony Fauci to serve as chief medical advisor to the president-elect. He's disappointed with the rising number of cases from Thanksgiving and warning the worst may be yet to come.
There's a lot of community spread. It just compounds itself one after the other, and the situation is that as we enter now from the Thanksgiving holiday season into the Christmas holiday season, it's going to be challenging.
But Americans are growing tired of lockdowns and inaction from lawmakers, like restaurant owner Jeff Good.
More stimulus is really needed for this economy. If we don't pay it now, we're going to pay it more later.
That renewed sense of urgency is also being felt on Capitol Hill, with some lawmakers rushing to get a $908 billion COVID-19 relief bill passed.
I'm very hopeful. It is desperately needed by the millions of families out there that this pandemic is wreaking havoc on their financial stability.
In Washington, Nadia Romero, KPBS News.
The city is announcing even more cases of COVID-19 at the convention center. An initial round of testing revealed 55 positive cases. 27 additional cases over the weekend brings the total now to 82. The convention center was repurposed in April to house unsheltered San Diegans and had just 30 cases until the recent outbreak. A man who was helped by the shelter says it should stay open.
It's a safe place. It's a clean place. They provide you meals. They wash your clothes. I don't see any other better programs that have done that. So I would highly recommend that they keep the convention center open for this reason.
Testing at the convention center is ongoing, and incoming Mayor Todd Gloria says he wants to keep the shelter open. Those who tested positive will quarantine at a local hotel. The county is now requiring an appointment at its free testing sites. We've seen long lines in recent weeks, and this is an attempt to reduce those crowds. Coronavirus-SD.com has more information, and people can also call 211 to get help by phone. Santa Ana winds and low humidity have caused another red flag warning to be issued across much of San Diego County through tomorrow night. And as a result, 2,800 customers in the East County have had their power shut off. And as KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer tells us, thousands more in high-risk areas face potential blackouts.
Strong winds and extreme dry conditions have made parts of San Diego County face elevated fire risk over the coming days. San Diego Gas and Electric announced that over 50,000 customers were notified of possible power shutoffs from today through Wednesday due to strong winds. The utility company says their crews remain on high alert and stand prepared to respond as needed. Alex Tardy of the National Weather Service says the red flag warning is cause for concern as San Diego County is still at high risk for wildfires.
It's as if it's October right now, even though the calendar says December, because our fuel conditions, our vegetation, is not only just dry, but it's record dry.
Tardy also says this red flag warning can be differentiated from other recent Santa Anas as it may affect parts of the county that previously did not see strong winds.
Other places that saw less wind last week will probably see more wind this week, and that could include areas along the valleys, like Escondido, Valley Center, Rancho Santa Fe, even places like El Cajon, and all the way up to Alpine. So this particular event overall looks to be a little weaker, but the concerning part about this event is some of the wind will be a little more widespread.
Something else that is new during this red flag warning, the Governor's Office of Emergency Services Social Bridging Project, which directly calls at-risk residents in San Diego County.
Only 1 out of every 4 San Diego folks are prepared, have an alert and warning system on their phone. We need to make that 4 out of 4, right? And so that's what we're really working toward, getting everyone prepared.
More than 2,500 San Diego County residents who live in high-risk areas have already been alerted by the state's Social Bridging Project. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Today is a solemn day in U.S. history. National Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day honors those who died after Japan's attack on December 7th, 1941. That was the day when the U.S. changed its stance regarding getting involved in World War II 2 years after it started. More than 3,500 Americans either died or were injured on that day. Several battleships were damaged, including the USS Arizona and the USS Oklahoma, which sunk. Pope Francis will be the first pope to visit Iraq. As Delia Gallagher reports, it will be his first international trip since the pandemic began.
Pope Francis will visit Iraq for 4 days next March. The Vatican announced on Monday it will be the first time ever a pope visits Iraq, as well as the first time Francis takes an international trip since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's been a long-held wish at the Vatican to have a pope visit Iraq. John Paul II tried back in 1999, but Saddam Hussein postponed that trip, according to the Vatican. And Francis himself in 2019 said he was hoping to go in 2020. In January of this year, the president of Iraq visited with Pope Francis at the Vatican, and one of the things they spoke about was the need to preserve the historical Christian population in the country. The Christian population of Iraq has drastically diminished in the last 2 decades. Francis is scheduled to visit Baghdad, Erbil, and Mosul, amongst other cities. There are no further details yet, but the Vatican says they will be taking into consideration the evolving worldwide health situation when planning the trip. Delia Gallagher, CNN, Rome.
A gold medal Olympian picked up another medal today at the White House. That's Dan Gable receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Gable is legendary coach at the University of Iowa, and he was also a champion wrestler in his own right, winning gold at the 1972 Olympics and 2 NCAA championships. Gable is among several sports figures honored by President Trump during his time in office. A San Diego researcher is being honored by having an ice formation in Antarctica named after her. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has more.
Helen Fricker is a glaciologist at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. She's helped pioneer the use of satellite data to track how water moves beneath the Antarctic ice. Now, an ice formation on the continent's peninsula is named after her. The Fricker Ice Piedmont is an amalgamation of ice from several different glaciers, and she says on the map it seems a bit small.
But if you think about it in terms of the size of like a Channel Island, I mean, I think it's actually about the size of the whole west end of Catalina from the isthmus to the west. So it's actually pretty substantial. It's just that Antarctica is huge.
The honor comes from the United Kingdom's Antarctic Place Names Committee, which is also naming 27 other locations in honor of modern explorers. It's the 200th anniversary of the discovery of the continent. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Another round of Santa Ana winds in our area, strongest tonight and into Tuesday. Tuesday will be the warmest day of the week, then it turns cooler for the end of the week as the onshore flow will make a return. As we take a look at the advisories, we do have high wind warnings, wind advisories. They are in effect through Tuesday. We also have red flag warnings in effect here. High fire potential, that's in effect through Tuesday as well. And right along the coast, we do have high surf advisories. Looking at our weather tonight, temperatures dropping down to low 40s in Oceanside, San Diego's 55, Ramona 43, and El Cajon at 51. For tomorrow, strong winds will be the big story of the day here. Winds could gust over 60 miles an hour in the mountains, and we'll see strong gusty winds in those wind-prone areas. And with the dry conditions, we are looking at a high fire risk. So it's going to be a rough day tomorrow. Looking at our temperatures, they're warm. 77 Oceanside, San Diego 76, El Cajon's 83, Ramona's 77. Keep in mind, average highs this time of year, inland areas are close to 70. The upper low will spin to our south on Wednesday, and then it'll start to pull away. And that will allow the onshore flow to return later in the week. So you can see Tuesday, our warmest day, and then it's cooler Thursday into Saturday. Inland sections, temperatures good 10 degrees above average tomorrow with the gusty winds. Then temperatures drop off for the end of the week. As we head our way through the mountains, quite windy. Temperatures will be cooler in the 50s for the end of the week. And as we take you out to the deserts, well, we're looking at some warm temperatures. And then the temperatures back off a little bit, but still a little bit above average into the weekend with plenty of sunshine. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
As end-of-semester grades and test scores start to roll in, it's becoming clear that the pandemic is taking a serious toll on student performance. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong explains what educators in San Diego County are doing to address the higher rates of failing grades this year.
For my classes right now, the grades they're not wonderful. They don't look great.
In normal years, English teacher Damien Patterson says he has about 5 or 6 students with D's and F's. But this year, among his 37 students at Grossmont High School in El Cajon, 12 students have F's. He said learning from home has come with obvious challenges.
It's hard to focus when you're surrounded by, you're in your bedroom, it's comfortable, you have your bed there, your TV, your PlayStation or whatever, your phone.
But he says that's only a part of the problem. Some of his students have shouldered burdens beyond their schoolwork since the pandemic hit.
Some of them have jobs that they're working. They are taking care of siblings while their parents are working or going to school.
These issues are not unique to Grossmont High or even San Diego County. Schools across the country have reported more D's and F's since COVID-19 shut down schools. It's yet another stark reminder of how hard it's been for educators to hold students accountable while being sensitive to their needs during distance learning. Teresa Kemper is the superintendent of the Grossmont Union High School District. When schools first closed in the spring, the district adopted a no-harm grading policy, and she said some students just stopped trying.
So we did want to provide more accountability. So coming into this school year, we said grades are on. You know, you're starting the year fresh this way, so everything matters, everything counts in the classroom.
But when the district saw the uptick in failing grades, principals and counselors ramped up outreach efforts and started a credit recovery program through which students can make up missed work.
What units or what assignments did students miss that quarter that maybe after school, before school, in winter session, in December, January, they can work with teachers to make up, to go back and fix that grade.
At Poway Unified School District, about 7% of all grades are F's this year, which is nearly twice the percentages last year. David Lemaster is the Executive Director of Learning Support Services at the district. He says the most effective remedy has been bringing students back to campus, even if it's just for 1 or 2 days a week.
When we see a student who's struggling, the principal counselor will reach out and offer them the ability to come in and learn virtually on campus. And that has really helped to re-engage the student into the learning.
Lemaster said he's not too worried about long-term consequences. He's confident that teachers and counselors will be able to keep students on the right path.
I think we're early enough in the year where we can catch those students and still get them back on track and ready to go so that it doesn't affect the numbers of kids graduating and or getting into the colleges that they want to get into.
Back in Grossmont, Patterson says this year has proven that there is no real substitute for an in-person classroom.
Students just tend to do better in the environment inside of a classroom where they're in front of a teacher and they're kind of held accountable, and they have teachers and different ones to check in on them and make sure that they're on task and things like that.
Joe Hong, KPBS News.
Bob Dylan has sold his entire songwriting catalog of more than 600 songs over 6 decades. The sale to Universal Music Publishing Group marks a major shift for the singer and songwriter who has controlled much of his own intellectual property. The purchase price wasn't disclosed, though, but the New York Times says it's estimated at more than $300 million. Bob Dylan has sold more than 125 million records and continues to perform worldwide. Tomorrow marks 40 years since the murder of John Lennon. A new documentary, premiering on the anniversary, delves into one of the last interviews the legendary musician ever gave. Rick Damigella has a preview.
But I was really too scared to walk away. I was considering the life without the Beatles. What would it be?
One of John Lennon's final recorded interviews is the basis of the documentary Lennon's Last Weekend.
The realization that John Lennon, who I'd interviewed on Saturday night in New York, had died while I was flying over the Atlantic was a shattering experience.
Retired BBC Radio 1 DJ Andy Peebles.
And we sat down to do an interview, which I thought would probably last an hour if things were going well, maybe slightly longer. The interview finished after 3 hours and 22 minutes.
Andy Peebles thought he was coming back with 8 reels of quarter-inch tape. In fact, what he was coming back with was probably the greatest obituary in the history of popular music.
I felt as though I'd won the world's greatest lottery. I'd had nearly 7 hours with a man who had been my hero. He was 8 years my senior, but we almost felt like buddies within a couple of hours. So I'd won the multi-million-pound lottery, only to have somebody phone me the next day and say, sorry, it's all a terrible mistake, you haven't won anything.
The interview with Andy Peebles completely changed my view of where John felt he was at as a man and as an artist and as a husband and as a father.
In Hollywood, I'm Rick Damigella.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, Congress moves closer to passing a long-awaited economic response to the pandemic's financial toll. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
We just got new coronavirus numbers from San Diego County, 1,998 cases and no additional deaths. Cases have surged across the state with new infections locally, recently topping 2,000 in a single day. We are among the 33 million Californians under a new stay-at-home order that forces more businesses to close for at least 3 weeks. California is rolling out a smartphone app to alert people if they spent time near someone who tests positive for the coronavirus. You can opt in to use it starting on Thursday. Officials say the tool doesn't track people's identities or locations, but uses Bluetooth wireless signals to detect when two phones are within 6 feet of each other for at least 15 minutes. And another red flag warning is in effect through tomorrow. SDG&E has cut power to 2,800 customers because of strong winds and wildfire danger. The utility notified 50,000 people that they may lose power at some point. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, so-called dreamers are still waiting for change in the government's immigration programs. And on Midday Edition, the milestones of the 1960s and 70s that made America's finest city what it is today. Longtime San Diego journalist Roger Shaoli will talk about his new book. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.